Faithful Niner Empire. What's good? You know who it is. It's your boy, Jay in the Bay. What is going up, everyone? It has been a minute since you've seen Jay in the Bay. Hope everyone's doing well out there tonight. Whew, man, it is a tough night. It's been a tough year to be a 49er fan. Let's keep it real. It was a tough to watch performance against the LA Rams. Oh man, definitely a snooze fest performance. I mean, the defense played. You couldn't ask for a better performance from the defense. Great to see Dre Greenlaw back out, but once again, the Niners lose to a division opponent. I think we only have one victory versus a division opponent this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Faithful, but definitely tough to watch on Sunday. Or excuse me, Thursday. Definitely tough to watch. How's everyone doing out there? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Definitely going to talk about this Rams game. Where did the 49ers go from here? Man, it's been a really tough season. And I appreciate everyone who's tuning in to the stream right now. Let's see. Dark Heart wrote a comment earlier. He says, "Fire Shanahan." Not the first time I've heard that, Dark Heart. Hopefully you can tune in live. Daniel Barry's in the building. What's good? What's good, Daniel? How you doing? Hope all is well. David McNiner. What's good? David McNiner says, "What's good, Jay? Not our 49ers." Yeah. And unfortunately, man, I mean, we're just an average squad. We continue to find ways to lose games. I see you, Amin the Dream. Let me know when you're ready, man. Appreciate you coming through tonight. But yeah, man, it's give me a thumbs up. Let me know when you're ready, Amin the Dream. All righty. All right, let's go. Let's bring on Amin the Dream. What's good? How you doing, man? How's your holiday season going, man?
Holiday season. This week is the finals, man. Forget holiday season. I gotta survive this week.
You gotta survive
I'm
this
like
week.
the
After
Niners.
this week, you're gonna excel. You're gonna pass them finals, flying colors. I believe in you. And then, hey, it's Christmas time, man.
I'm
But
like the Niners, man. I'm trying to get week. I'm trying to survive week to week, and then last couple of weeks, just trying to make sure the grades stay intact.
no, absolutely, very important, man. Whew, man. Anything you got to get off your chest, man, regarding that Niner game on Thursday night football? I mean, what stands out to you about that game, and just about the Niners in general, man? Let me know.
I mean, like this season has just been atrocious, Jay. Like this season is just hasn't been it. If I told you in the beginning of the season that the Niners would be last in the NFC West, which is not like the NFC North, which has like 3 10+ win teams. This is like a mediocre division where it's like up for grabs, where every team honestly has a chance of making it to the playoffs, even going into next week and the next couple of weeks. But man, this whole Niners season has just been a straight up bummer. This team has not been playing good this year. A lot of issues, obviously, special teams with some of the injuries that people have been talking about. Kyle Shanahan and some of his decisions. Yeah, man, it just hasn't been it. Like even regardless of the Rams game, the biggest game of your season to either keep your season alive, and you can't even put up a touchdown. Like,
And
yeah,
and I feel like this game has been it's deja vu all over again. The Niners defense plays well in the first half, play lights out. I think the Rams, like first 6 offensive drives, they were punts. It's like, what what else do you want this defense to do? Obviously Bosa was hampered. It was great to see Dre Greenlaw back. Clearly he's an upgrade over Campbell. We'll definitely talk about Campbell in a little bit, but it was good to see the Niners defense do its thing. Of course, when we needed that one stop, this defense couldn't get it done. But I mean, if the offense can only score 6 points, there's not a defense going right now that can really win the game for their squad. This Niners offense has been a disappointment. The last time we went live, I was saying that Purdy had regressed. Um, did you think that statement was true?
I mean, he hasn't been playing to the level that we've seen him play last year and obviously the year before that. He's not at that level this year. Now, you could say that might be Brock Purdy regressing, but at the same time, this whole team has been mediocre this year for the most part, except for a few guys where you could say, like, hey, De'Amon Lenore, he's been exceptional this year. Jawan Jennings, he's been exceptional this year. Otherwise, this whole entire team has been straight up mediocre this year. So is it really Brock Purdy and him regressing, or is it a mix of obviously the team around him that has regressed this year and significant? If you look at Deebo Samuel, who honestly, if he wasn't Deebo Samuel on any other team, he probably would have been benched by now with some of the mistakes and some of the things he's been doing. And then obviously you don't have Brandon Ayuk, but outside of Jawan Jennings, who's every single game, he's pretty much Mr. Reliable for the most part, always hustles. David says George Kittle. George Kittle has been good this year. Who else has been good? Ricky Pearsall, you don't even see him during the games. Like I don't even know why you draft a wide receiver in the first round. You barely see him in the game. So yeah, but is it really Brock Purdy that he regressed, or is it the team around him that also has had a pretty much of a down year this year? And that's the thing. I don't like the interception that Purdy threw. Those are unexcusable. Some of them, like decisions and the way that he's played this year, some of it is on him. But at the same time, like this Niners team has been playing up to expectation this entire year. And even when you hear about like Kyle Shanahan and the way that he schemed up certain games and the way that his offensive game plan for some games has just been like, it just doesn't make sense. We haven't done a stream in a long time, but like even when Christian McCaffrey was healthy, like I still remember like watching the games and I'm like, Jordan Mason has like 2 carries and he has like freaking 16 yards and he's averaging like 8 yards per carry and he's doing his thing, and then you'll never see him after that again. And we're like, Kyle, why aren't we getting to see more of Jordan Mason? It's just the Christian McCaffrey show, and Christian McCaffrey is not even able to find a hole. So like I'm like, I don't understand why we're not using Jordan Mason more, or why we're not using Guerendo. Like we started using Guerendo and obviously he got hurt, but there's been a lot of questionable decisions from Kyle. Obviously with Deebo and the way that he's played this entire year, with the injuries of losing Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, who's been out the last couple of games. This just hasn't been the Niners season. But in terms of Purdy in specific, I don't necessarily know I don't necessarily say we could say that he's regressed. But at the same time, he hasn't been playing up to the standard or the expectation that we've seen him play in previous years.
Yeah, I think what's good, SGA Sports Talk. I won't be sending out the link tonight, but appreciate you tuning in, man. We'll read your comments. Feel free to send your comments through. But I think when Purdy was at his height, his first 24, 25 games, he had a lot of weapons around him that were performing at their peak. You look at, Ayuk, all-pro wide receiver. Deebo was still productive. Obviously, CMC was playing at an all-pro level. And when you take that talent away from him, it starts to show that he's not a quarterback that can, as they say, put the team on his back. But I hate that term because there's only a handful of quarterbacks that can really do that. You look at Lamar Jackson, you look at Josh Allen.
I wouldn't even say Lamar, Jay.
You wouldn't say Lamar?
I wouldn't say Lamar. I think Lamar is a great quarterback. I think he obviously MVP, puts up stats, but when you really think about it, like when was the last time you really seen Lamar put his team on his back in a game that like actually matters? He's lost multiple his playoff stats are horrible. He hasn't made it to the Super Bowl yet. He lost to Kansas City last year. I think he lost to Cincinnati maybe the year before that, but like the Ravens with all the talent that they have, even though people are saying Lamar doesn't have a receiver, this year he has Derrick Henry. So like at this point, at least if the Ravens don't make it to the AFC Championship game, right? Forget Super Bowl. If they don't make it to at least the AFC Championship game, that's a little bit of another disappointing season for Lamar. So I wouldn't say Lamar is one of those quarterbacks. He puts up stats. He puts up numbers every single year. And he's an electric quarterback. But I would say the 2 quarterbacks, like you said, Mahomes and Allen, are those 2 guys that, like, you watched against the Rams last week, even though they lost 6 touchdowns by himself with
Yeah.
no interceptions. That's putting your team on your back when you have no Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper who's banged up. Like you have who's on that team that you're like, you know what? Like I would want that Bills offensive player on my team except for Josh Allen. Maybe James Cook. But even then, like I wouldn't want James Cook on the Niners if we have Christian McCaffrey and all those guys. I would still take CMC over James Cook. But at the same time, who would you out on that offense be like, I want him on my team? Maybe Deion Dawkins, their offensive lineman, because the Niners do need offensive line help. But besides
Yeah.
that, like Josh Allen's working with nothing.
I guess part of the reason or part of what goes into putting a team on your back is doing really well and exceeding expectations with lesser talent, or
Yeah.
you don't have all pro players around you. Granted, this year Lamar Jackson has Derrick Henry, but before that he never had a all pro wide receiver. I think Flowers is hella good. I don't know if he's all pro caliber, but he can definitely get there. But um, he hasn't had that all pro talent, but he's still gone far in the playoffs. I think one season he went to the. Has he been to the AFC Championship?
He won last
The
year.
Ravens?
He won
Last
last
year,
year,
okay.
and they lost. And they put up 10 points offensively.
Okay. So he's gotten there. So like I said, he's one of, for me, he's one of a handful of quarterbacks that have done it without all pro talent. We've seen Purdy this year without the all pro talent around him, and he struggled. Obviously, Jennings has been a beast. Kittle has been a beast, but take away CMC, you take away Ayuk. Also, there may be lingering effects from that shoulder injury that he suffered, because obviously the deep ball isn't the same. And when you don't have a deep ball, you're not able to stretch the defense. I mean, the defense knows that you're not going to throw past 15, 20, 25 yards. It makes their job much easier. So I would say that Purdy hasn't regressed. I would say that just the talent around him isn't the same. I heard a crazy stat from Larry Krueger this morning. I think he said last season, the three best 49er weapons, CMC, Ayuk, and Debo, I believe, scored 40 touchdowns. And this season, they've only scored 4. Like, that's crazy. Like, how do you expect the same level of production from Purdy if the talent around him isn't, it's, I don't want to say Debo has lost a step. He's not consistent. Now that I don't know if that's, I feel like the way Shanahan is using him, he doesn't. So yeah, okay, he has lost a step because
He has lost
the way
a step,
Shanahan,
Jay.
the way Shanahan was using him in the past, it worked, and now it doesn't. So clearly, the defense knows what to expect, and also he doesn't have the same ability. I think Debo is good as a kick returner. I think he's solid there. I think they just need to get the ball to Debo in space, and he needs to. The ball he dropped, that's where you use Debo. Quick slants, get him the ball. He can. I still think he's fast. He can still outrun people, but he's no longer the guy that can break multiple tackles, make the first defender miss. That's just that's just not Debo anymore. And you don't see the back-to-back-to-back, 100-yard receiving games, or even just 100 scrimmage yards. When Debo runs the ball, it's usually if he gets to the line of scrimmage, I'm surprised at this point, because unfortunately that's just not fooling anyone. Bay Area Throwbacks, what's good? Appreciate you tuning in to the stream tonight, man. Hope all is well. Purdy's going to be a free agent this offseason. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of talk about that. Do you feel that Purdy should be paid among, the top tier quarterbacks? And it's not really based on his ability per se or his success. It's basically, well, the other guys before him have gotten this amount, and Purdy and Dak comparable. Purdy and Jalen Hurts comparable. Purdy and Tua, I think, are comparable, and those guys are making upwards of $50 million per year. I mean, if you're Purdy's agent, his family, you would be dumb to take a discount from the 49ers. It wouldn't really make sense. So if you're John Lynch, do you extend Purdy? Do you try to draft another late round quarterback? Do you go for a veteran free agent? Like, what would you do if you were Mr. Lynch?
If I'm Mr. Lynch right now, retrospective, what I think the Niners will end up signing Purdy. They'll cave. They're gonna cave, right? They're gonna give him. Some Niners fans might not like it, but they're gonna give him his asking price, 55, 60, whatever it is. He's gonna be one of the highest, at least top 3, maybe top 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the league. It's gonna happen. It's inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Unless Brock Purdy in the next 3 games somehow, I'm not wishing it upon him, but like either has a big injury, tears his ACL, something that might, change the outcome if he has a major injury. But besides that, if he survives these next 3 games and he comes out healthy without a scratch, he's getting that back.
Yeah.
If I was John Lynch in the 49ers, would I re-sign Brock Purdy? It depends, because I think you can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. I think he's capable of winning a Super Bowl. But at the same time, do I think with this Niners team and the way, even looking at this season where we have the injuries and the team isn't as talented as it was last year, and you see Purdy struggling, once you lock in Purdy to that $60 million contract that he wants annually, the rest of your team, the team around Brock Purdy, isn't as good. We all know that, right? And when you see Brock struggling now with the injuries, with a talented, you could say talented roster still, but with the injuries, and injuries are inevitable, so they're going to happen also next year. And when you sign Brock Purdy to that $60 million contract, if you do sign Brock Purdy to that $60 million contract, he's shown it this year. And I don't think in general that Brock Purdy's that quarterback like a Josh Allen or like a Mahomes. And those are the only 2 guys. So it's not a fair comparison, right? It's not a fair comparison to sit up and compare Mahomes and Allen to Purdy. I'm not going to make that comparison. But what I'm saying is that I would give the $60 million or the $70 million or whatever the number might be to a Mahomes and Allen, because I know if I give them what they want, they can still produce even if their team is less talented around them. Right. Where with Brock Purdy, if I give Brock Purdy that $60 million, that means his weapons, his offensive line, the defense his entire team is going to be much less talented than what it was when he was getting paid $900K, right? On top of that, the mistakes that Brock Purdy makes now, even if he throws an interception or whatever, that's a $900,000 quarterback. As much as Brock Purdy's a great story and all that, $900K, you still have flexibility if you want to move off him or whatnot. If he's throwing interceptions like he did at the end of the Rams game, or he's making bad decisions, or he's struggling in rain when he's getting paid as a $60 million quarterback, that's a whole nother story, right? Because at this point now, it's like it doesn't affect the Niners. The Niners got lucky. We got Brock Purdy, $900,000. He's a steal. The Niners could have won the Super Bowl last year. When he's getting paid $60 million and he makes the same mistakes, the same people that are on the Purdy boat now aren't going to be on the Purdy boat if he's throwing interceptions or struggling in the rain when he's getting paid $60 million. So the way that I look at it is I think the Niners will end up re-signing Purdy regardless. But if I was the 49ers, I would re-sign Purdy to the Baker Mayfield contract if you are going to re-sign him. And that's just, even though I don't think he would do it, right? But I would give Brock Purdy the Baker Mayfield contract. Say, here, we'll give you 3 years. If you want $40 million a year, maybe, right? The $40 million 3 years, that's around 120, right? I think 120.
So Baker got 3 years,
100 million. I think he got
100 million. 100
so
million.
I want to give Brock a little bit more than that because Brock feels like he wants a little bit more. 40 million, like fine, 3 years, 120 million. Here you go, Brock. You're our guy for the next 3 years. Go show us something. But if you're locking him in for 5-6 years and making him get $60 million, at that point, I'm not saying go out and sign Sam Darnold and go out and sign another quarterback, but at that point, like, I wouldn't personally pay Purdy that much money because I don't think that Brock Purdy can win with the talent. I mean, people are going to say, well, we need more young talent. Let's draft. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have shown you the ability that they can't draft in the first round. They're great at the late rounds, but at the end of the day, like, those late rounds, the Niners really got lucky in those late rounds. And you can't depend every single year that the Niners are going to find some sort of gem every single year in the late rounds. It's not guaranteed. It's like those things happen very rarely. But for the Niners, it's been happening a little bit more consistently than most teams. But you can't bank on that every single year going into the season that, hey, we hope a Dominic Pooney or we hope our 6th round pick Tano Ufanga can come out and be a starter, or Malik Mustafa. You can't bank on that. And they clearly have shown the ability that they can't draft in the first round. So if I were to re-sign Brock Purdy and I was John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan, I would give him the Baker Mayfield contract. I'll give you 3 years. We'll give you 120, a little bit more than Baker. You have 3 years, go out and do something. But that way we're not obviously tied to you long term, and that also gives us flexibility if I'm John Lynch as a team to go out and sign some free agents and go out and build a Super Bowl roster for you in order to compete. But $60 million, 6 years, 290 or something like that, I'm good, Brock. I'm okay. I'd rather, either draft a quarterback or sign someone for similar production, but I'm okay. Like, I wouldn't even mind Justin Fields on this team. I know it would kill Kyle. It would completely, right? It would be a whole, issue. I don't think Justin Fields would work in Kyle's system, but, if I had to go and bring in Justin Fields to be the Niners quarterback or go pay Brock 6-year, $290 million, I would go and bring in Justin Fields and sign him for a 2-year, $20 million, then bring in Brock Purdy. That's just me. It's an unpopular opinion. I'm not saying Brock isn't a franchise quarterback, but I just don't think Brock can overcome if he doesn't have that much talent around him. And we already seen it this year. But imagine if he has $60 million. That's the Niners cap hit every single year for Brock. And D.O. might be gone next year. And you have a bunch of other rookies starting. It's not going to be a Super Bowl winning squad. So it's not really worth signing your quarterback if you're not going to, if you're not going to have a Super Bowl team around him. So, yeah, I'm okay.
With that 3-year deal that you proposed, would that be fully guaranteed?
No, it would not be fully guaranteed. It would.
So you want him to take less money and not fully guaranteed?
That's just me. If he wants to go somewhere else, you're more than welcome to go somewhere else, Brock. Right? But at the end of the day, do I know that the Niners are going to re-sign Brock and cave eventually, even if he holds out for a little bit? They're going to cave, right? They're going to cave.
They don't really have a choice. If you don't sign Brock, if you let him walk in free agency, or if you trade him, then basically the next season is going to be lost unless you get a veteran quarterback like a Russell Wilson or a Jameis Winston or something like that. I don't know if this fan base, I don't know if Kyle Shanahan is ready for a rebuild, and that's kind of what you would be doing.
But
do we even trust Shanahan to draft another quarterback?
I don't. I've already been on that train where I think Kyle should be gone this year, but that's just me.
Oh yeah, but how can you fire Kyle if the talent around Brock has eroded and it's not really Kyle's fault?
I'm okay, for example, when Jim Harbaugh had his down year, right? I'm okay with you having a down year. What I'm not okay with, Kyle, is you being in denial. And what Kyle does, if you want, you've seen the games, Jay. We have Christian McCaffrey not struggling and having 7 carries for 12 yards, and then Jordan Mason gets 1 and he goes for 16, and then you don't see Jordan Mason after that. Or, this decisions like that where you're like, Kyle, what is the thought process, right? And those are things where it's those aren't your team or your surround or your team having injuries or things like that. That's just you not being willing. That's decision making that Kyle just refuses to acknowledge. I don't think Kyle's not capable. It's just that Kyle wants to do it his way. He's a person that I'm going to do it my way, or it's my way or the highway. And those things as a coach, those things about Kyle bother me, right? Dan Campbell, for example. I watched Dan Campbell's interview yesterday, and he said, locker room, this game was on me. It was my fault. It was my bad. It starts with me, the head coach. I have to get these guys ready. Kyle said that after what was it, the Buffalo game? He held some accountability. And then what did Kyle do the next 2 games? Obviously, you beat the Chicago Bears, who are the dumpster fires of the league, who are a garbage organization, who freaking are trash, who just fired their head coach. And we're like, oh my God, the Niners are back. Kyle coached a phenomenal game against the Bears. And then what does he do against the Rams? He doesn't put up a single touchdown. Yeah. Right? So we're sitting up here and we're obviously crying the Niners for beating the Bears. But then when it actually matters against the Bills or the Rams or even the Rams B team earlier on this year, right? There's games in Kyle's decision making that I question a lot. And those aren't things that your roster, obviously with the injuries, those are things that you have control over, Kyle, yet you refuse to acknowledge it. And when I see a coach like Dan Campbell say, hey, you know what? I didn't have my team ready to play. What that tells me is that from your head coach, from your leadership of your team, your head coach, look at the guys in that locker room, right? Those guys in that locker room respect Dan Campbell. I'm not saying the Niners players don't respect Kyle, but they respect Dan Campbell and they're willing to go to war with Dan Campbell. And I think Dan Campbell's building that culture in Detroit. Whereas if you look at the 49ers, after losses, Debo's out here like, bro, I didn't get the ball enough. And Deontay Lenore was like, oh, the Cardinals got lucky or the Rams got lucky. And it's like, where do you think that stems from? When your head coach is out here making excuses or saying, we didn't do, it was, I went with the best play call or I did this right, but it just didn't work out. And he's not holding himself accountable. What you expect your players on your team to hold themselves accountable or to say, you know what, and look themselves in the mirror.
I expect the players to perform when their number is called. Like Debo, like stop talking. Like really, like
who decided to bring Debo back this year? Who keeps giving the ball to Debo? That's
right. No,
we've all been saying Debo hasn't been it.
Yeah, but Debo can still play. I mean, I don't think that Debo has forgot how to play football. Has he lost a step? Yes, but he's an NFL wide receiver. He dropped the ball that could have easily been a touchdown. I don't really want to hear from Debo. He's done enough talking as is. Like just
Debo should be gone next year, Jay.
I think that's a fair statement. I don't know. I'll have to look up the contract and all that, but I mean, yeah, I mean he's Kyle's guy, unfortunately. He'll probably be back.
Jay, for the production that you're getting out of Debo and the off the field shenanigans that I'm getting from Debo, it's not necessarily like stuff that you see on social media and stuff like that, but the stuff that you see from Debo on like his podcast weekly. I'm okay with you having a podcast, cool. But then don't sit up here on your podcast and be like, we the best in the league, and it, last week wasn't our week, and we're still the best team in the NFC, and people should fear us. And I'm like,
I don't think he's saying that anymore.
I'm like, y'all haven't won a Super Bowl, Debo. Y'all are not. You're not nobody fears you in the NFC no more. Like, and you sit up here on your podcast and you act like you're this really good team. When T.O. calls you out, you're saying you're not getting the ball enough. Yet you're dropping balls left and right. And that attitude, personally, of like even Moody, like I'm not a Moody guy. Like I don't like Moody. I don't care if he makes 50-yarders, 40-yarders.
Baby, Moody 2 for 2.
That's how slow the bar is set. Oh my God, Moody made 2 field goals. Wow, look at you, Jake.
In the rain.
You did your job. You did your job, Jake Moody. That's how low the bar is set, right? But like for me, in terms of Debo, it's like Debo with the whole punching Jake and like all the stuff, all of the.
I don't have a problem with him doing that. Like,
and then go out and perform.
But that's the thing. That's the thing. If you're gonna
not perform,
Debo's a captain, so I think he has the right to say, "Hey, lock in. We need you. We believe in you. Just lock in." But if you do say that, you got to back it up too. You have to be productive too.
Also. You got to lock it also. Yeah.
Right. So that's a problem. We got to get into Devondre Campbell. We have M27. What's good? M27 says nobody wants to say it, but the linebacker quitting in the middle of the game is on Kyle Shanahan. He didn't keep the guys in the loop throughout the season. Real quick, the 49ers, I should say Devondre Campbell was not the first option for the 49ers. We wanted to sign Michael Kendricks in the offseason. He agreed on, verbally, but then he spurned us for the Cowboys. Now, any linebacker who gets signed by the Niners, specifically this past offseason, you'd have to, lived on Mars to not know that Dre Greenlaw, the only reason why we're signing a vet linebacker is because Dre Greenlaw tore his Achilles. So clearly when he comes back, you're going to the bench, no matter who it is. So I just think Campbell didn't read the room. I don't think this reflects on Shanahan at all. Supposedly, I heard as well that the Niners had 2 straight 12 men on the field penalties, and supposedly it was because Devondre Campbell didn't want to come out the game. So I don't know. Is it the linebacker coach? Is it the defensive coordinator? Someone's not keeping him in line. I mean, is Kyle Shanahan the head of the snake? Absolutely, but someone's got to keep this guy in line. And I mean, I know that when Greenlaw comes back, he's going to start. So I don't understand why Campbell doesn't know. Do you think this has a reflection on Kyle Shanahan and his poor leadership, and that's why Campbell, decided not to come in the game? Do you agree with this statement?
I mean, let's put it like this. Maybe it wasn't clearly stated to Devondre Campbell that, hey, man, when Dre Greenlaw is the heart and soul of our defense and arguably our team, when he comes back from his injury, he's going to be a starter, Devondre.
Mm-hmm.
We all knew that. The national media knew that, but maybe
Right.
you didn't get the message from Kyle. And if
Clearly.
Kyle didn't tell you that, then maybe that's Kyle's bad. But at the same time, what I do give Kyle blame is that Nick Bosa said in an interview today that there was stuff going on in the locker room before the game. Devondre Campbell was unhappy. He was a little bit in distress, and he wasn't happy, and he was shouting, and he was upset. And if you see your player doing that before the game, you address that issue before the game. But
Right.
instead, he let Devondre Campbell go out there, and then Devondre Campbell quitting mid-game, and that ends up becoming a bigger story than the game itself. Devondre Campbell ended up leaving in the third quarter. That's the problem where I feel like, Kyle, if you knew that stuff was going on in the locker room, you don't let that go out on the field, because if you are the head coach of the team, you have to make sure your team has guys that someone put out a Mike Singletary interview about, like, Mike Singletary a long time ago. He's like, I'd rather have 10 players that get penalized, each and every single player that want to be out there. And if
I
you
want
know,
winners.
I want winners. Like, yeah, I mean, Mike Singletary, that's another story. Great player, whatever, coach. But I mean, if you know your guy isn't fully committed to your team and he's hurting your team if he's out there, or he has a potential to hurt your team if he's out there, then you address that in the locker room and you don't let him play. But instead, he let him play and he walked off on his guys.
Well, they needed him, though. That's the thing. I mean, no one. I didn't expect Dre Greenlaw to play the whole game. Would I've loved to see it? Yeah, but he missed the whole year. Like, there's no way he's going to play every series. So DFF was out there, but he was hobbled too. You could tell he was hobbled, and even honestly, even when he's 100% healthy, he's not even as good as Devondre Campbell, dare I say. But I just feel like if you're Campbell, it's just that's one thing you can't do to your brothers. Like, clearly this has been a tragic season. Rookie got shot. 2 players, their children died. Like, and they're willing to go out there and play, but you're going to quit on the team mid-game. I mean, that's something you can't do as a football player. Like, I think everyone on the squad would respect him more if he said during the week leading up to the game, can you just release me? Just ask to be released. Why even go through all the warm-ups? Why go through practice if you're not going to? Because you knew the situation. You knew Greenlaw was coming back. You knew he was going to get the bulk of the snaps. And if he would have came in the game, he would have finished the game in the third quarter or the third and fourth quarter. So I think he played his last down in the NFL. I don't see how a team would sign him. And last I heard, the Niners are trying to
suspending him. Yeah,
they're suspending him. They're not going to cut him outright, but they're going to try to suspend him and recoup some of his bonus money. So, and I think that's fair, especially we have guys who are in much dire situations, and they're still going out there to play. Mooney Ward knows he's going to not be on this squad most likely next year. He's still going out there to play. So, yeah, I think it's a slap in the face to your brothers.
And you don't quit on your guys, right? And like, the problem I have with Kyle, I would say, in this situation is that if you knew that before the game, you address it before the game. But like, think about it after you.
I don't think he knew he didn't want to. Well, he wasn't going to go in the game. I mean, unless Campbell told him, I'm not going in at all. I mean, which we'll never know. But
I mean, Nick Bosa said that he was distressed in the locker room, and I still feel like you address it before you get on the field, regardless of what happens. Like, if Devondre Campbell was that much like upset and he wasn't playing, like, at that point you let him know before the game of, like, if you're upset for whatever reason, because he was probably upset, like Greenlaw or whatever, that he knew that he wasn't going to get opportunities, right, or he wasn't going to get as much playing time as he wanted. So if you're Kyle and you know that your player is distressed, you go up to him and be like, dude, well, I hope you know that you aren't going to play this much this game. Greenlaw's back. He's going to start. Are you sure you're still going to be out there? And if, like, I'm not Devondre Campbell. Let's say that if Devondre Campbell, you can ask him that question. I don't think Devondre Campbell wanted to just go out there and cause shenanigans and whatever. Like, if you tell Devondre Campbell and you're transparent with him and be like, dude, you're not playing this game. And the funny thing is, I don't know what, like, it's funny because the only reason I laugh at it is because I feel like, Devondre Campbell, are you not on social media at all? Or, like, do you not watch the news at all? Because Niners fans were literally calling for you to be benched since, like, week 2. Right, and it's almost like Devondre Campbell is out here like, I'm third in the team in tackles. I had 44 tackles. I deserve to start. I deserve playing time. And it's like, dude, we were talking about starting rookies over you or playing rookies over you, D winners, or like we didn't want you playing as long as you even did, and now you want to play over Greenlaw? You're out your mind.
Yeah, he didn't read the room. He doesn't know his role, and he has, he thinks higher of himself than what is actually true. Is he a good football player? Sure, but he's not going to be getting snaps over Dre Greenlaw. Like, come on, dog. Like, you crazy? I can confirm what M27 has said. Debo won't be gone next year. His dead cap hit is $31 million. So Debo's definitely coming back, just based off this number alone.
Trade Debo.
Who would want him? Who would want him at that price? And could the Niners? What would the Niners get? Like a 6th-round pick? Like,
I'm okay with a 6th-round pick.
You might. I just think you might as well bring him back. You're not gonna have Ayuk. You're not gonna have Ayuk probably till the middle of next season, like maybe by Thanksgiving, maybe. And even then, there's going to be a ramp up period. He's going to miss training camp again. We already know how that turned out this year. So Debo's next. Yeah.
If you want to win,
getting older.
If you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to have guys with strong mentalities. And there's a few guys on the team, like a Fred Warner, like a Dre Greenlaw, that have strong and good mentalities. And there's also guys like Deommodore Lenoir who make excuses after games or say they got lucky, or Debo, who's a captain, like you said, and who isn't performing up to expectations and saying he isn't getting the ball enough. And if, like, next year, you're going to give Purdy that $60 million, which is going to end up happening anyways. But if you're really, really serious about winning a Super Bowl, and as much as Debo's a talented player, I don't want guys in the locker room that aren't performing up to expectation and that are saying that we're the best team in the league and da-da-da, I'm still great, I'm just not getting the ball enough. I don't want that in my locker room. I don't care how good Debo is. Debo's not worth keeping. He's not performing to that expectation where it's like, you know what? As much as he has these off-the-field issues or he's a little bit of a personality, a little bit of a diva, he's still performing and he still impacts us winning. Debo hasn't impacted us winning. And the only game I would say he probably did last year was that Philadelphia game.
Well, he had a good game against Seattle this year.
But besides that, like this year, he hasn't impacted winning at all. And
he had that kickoff return, but it got called back.
And also, I would say this, Jay, is that with Debo on this team, when you think about it, when Kyle doesn't have Christian McCaffrey, he relies so much on Debo, and that's literally his whole game plan. It's like me and Madden, man. It's like me and Madden. It's like, when the running game doesn't work a little bit, I start getting really pass heavy and I start forcing the ball like one receiver, and then I end up throwing interceptions. Like, it's literally me and Madden. I'm like talking about myself and Madden, but like he's so reliant on Debo that your offense becomes so one-dimensional. And the amount that he was using Debo in that Rams game, like just forcing it to Debo, giving Debo, he wasn't doing anything. Debo wasn't effective, right? But that's all Kyle knows, that like, if I lose one of my, it's kind of like how would I give the analogy? It's like someone with like a broken leg. It's like I have this broken leg and I lost one of my crutches, so now I'm going to rely on this one crutch to get me by. But what if that one crutch gets hurt? Or what if that one crutch isn't strong enough for you to walk properly? But like you're so reliant on this one crutch that you don't realize that it's actually ending up hurting you instead of actually benefiting you. So like Debo and CMC are those two crutches for Kyle that when he's in panic situations or when he doesn't have Christian McCaffrey or when Debo's hurt, he relies so much on that one guy that the offense becomes one-dimensional in a way.
No, I agree. I just think Debo has had some great moments with the 49ers, and I still feel like he can still be a really good player. I just think they have to use him differently. But also, when his number is called, he's got to perform. He's got to catch the ball. I still think he can. He's going to have to benefit. He's going to have to be one of the best offensive players on the squad next year because they're not going to cut him. I don't see that happening, especially with that dead cap hit, $31 million. Even if you spread it out over 2 years, it's $15 million a year just for him not to be here. So I just think you can't force feed him but maybe if he, I think we wouldn't really be saying this if he would have caught that ball, scored a touchdown. I feel like Debo still has moments where he can still be that dog, still be that really talented wide receiver, but it's just not as consistent. But I guess you could say, well, there's only been two great offensive players, that's Jennings and Kittle. And is that because maybe it's Purdy hindered? I think that's part of it. But and I think you got to use them as a kick returner and punt returner. I mean, you're muted.
He'll get hurt. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
He can't, Jay. His body, he'll get injured. Like with his and his, like with
Well,
his
you
health.
gotta use him somehow. I mean,
That's what I'm saying, Jay. That's what I'm saying. When you really think about it, Jay, when you really think about it, in the 4 years that he's been here, like Debo has games where he puts up numbers in terms of in the pass game, but Debo can't separate. He can't separate. He consistently, regardless of that Rams game, he's consistently watching Niners games. He consistently drops a slant ball wide open. He's done it multiple times. It's happened at least 5 or 6 times. He'll get a slant and he'll drop a wide open pass, and you're like, Debo, you can't do that. And Debo's a wide receiver primarily, right? So if you can't use him in the kick and punt return game because he'll get hurt, if he's not a guy that can separate, he's not really doing his job as a receiver. He lacks in that aspect. And then if you use him in the way that Kyle Shanahan uses him, eventually, the first year what made it so good is that teams don't have tape on that, right? So it becomes this creative thing that, wow, look at the way that Kyle Shanahan's using Debo. We haven't found a way to stop that. At this point, 2024, teams have found ways to stop that. It's not going to change in 2025. So what is Debo really effective or good at now? What is he... the only reason we would say why we would keep him on this team next year is, yes, he has a $31 million dead cap. And then 2, because you're so depleted with injuries, with Ayuk being out, you have no better option. So might as well keep Debo. It's not because, Debo, you're really going to help us next year. You're like, Debo, we're only keeping you realistically because of your dead cap, your money situation, and because we were so depleted that we have to bring you back. And on top of that, Kyle really loves you. For whatever reason, he really does like you. That's it. It's not like, Debo, we need you on this team because of your way that you're playing.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. That's basically the reason. G12.
I need to get it out, Jay. Jay, this has been for months. This is for the last 2 months.
And when Debo was at his peak, you had Ayuk, you had Jennings, you had CMC. Maybe that's part of the reason why Debo was that good, because defenses couldn't just key on him. They had to worry about the other weapons on the field. And now Jennings is good, but he's not a burner. He's not really going to take it to the house. But he's a great possession receiver, and he's got reliable hands. He had an off game against the Rams, but I mean, it's that's going to happen from time to time. But I think that's also part of the reason why Debo has been diminished is they can key on him. There's not other guys that are really, and I think you got to use George Kittle more. And we've been saying that's been said for years. Kittle has definitely been underutilized. He's having a hell of a season. But I think he should be the focal point in the offense. Get the ball more to Kittle. Absolutely.
Yeah, but Jay, it kind of sucks. I'm not into it this year at all. I'm done. I'm done with this regime. I'm done. But it definitely doesn't help when you could be using Kittle more in the pass game, but instead, because you refuse to invest in your offensive line, your right tackle, your center, because you refuse to invest in it, that Kittle has to be a blocker on a lot of snaps, and he has to be kind of like your supplement, not your substitute right tackle in a way. Right. So it's
and that's where things have to change. Obviously, I would give Kyle another season. I think he's dare I say, earned a year where everything that could go wrong did go wrong with the squad. So I'm willing to give him another year.
Can I convince you, Jay? Can I convince you?
I don't think you could convince me to fire Kyle after this season, where your captain Trent Williams, the big silver back, has 3 years left on his contract, and he's going to hold out anyway. That's not Kyle's fault.
He hypothetically retires next year. What are you going to do with Trent Williams?
If Trent retires?
If he hypothetically retires, what are you doing with that offensive line? Your runs to the left side are automatically gone.
Well, I think the philosophy has to change. I mean, with Kyle, he wants to do more with less on his offensive line, and as we've seen, Detroit, you see what Pittsburgh, you see teams that really invest in the trenches, and that really makes a huge difference with their running game and just pass protection and things like that. But Kyle doesn't want to do that. Even the offensive line coach said, "Oh no, we do more with less. We don't need first round, second round talent offensive linemen." Like who says that, right? But that's going to have to change. Will it? Probably not, unfortunately. But yeah, if Trent retires, the left side, they'll probably say, "Oh, we'll go with Jalen Moore." That's probably what they would do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they would do, and especially if you're paying Brock, top 8 quarterback money, you're going to have to hit in the draft, and this team has been terrible, abysmal, drafting in the first round. Other than what Bosa and what Ayuk first round, other than that, all the picks have basically not panned out. So that's coming to bite him. Also, you look at the Javon Hargrave signing. Obviously, he'll probably be cut. That was a mistake. But I think the philosophy has to change. Will it? Probably not, because it's Kyle's way or no way, as we know.
So then, what makes any Niner fan confident that you bring back Kyle for another year, that you're going to make it back to the Super Bowl? Fans are worried that it's going to get worse without Kyle. Fans are worried that it'll get worse without Kyle. My point is that Kyle is stuck in his ways. He won't change his philosophies, and with the way that he's not able to change his philosophy hasn't worked, because we've blown 2 Super Bowls with the Niners, and he's blown a Super Bowl with the Falcons as an offensive coordinator. So if Kyle refuses to change his philosophies after 3 Super Bowl losses, why is all of a sudden Kyle going to change his philosophy now? And one last thing that I would say before I let you go, Jay, is that people compare Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan. The difference is Andy Reid he knows how to develop quarterbacks, one, right? And he's a much better coach now than he was in Philadelphia. But when you really look at Andy Reid, you don't think Eagles fans are saying the same thing? What if we get rid of Andy Reid? He's taking us to NFC Championship games and Super Bowls. What if you get rid of Andy Reid? What if he goes and wins a Super Bowl somewhere else? Yeah, Andy Reid went to Kansas City, and in his first 5 or 6 seasons, he did the same exact thing in Kansas City that he did in Philadelphia when Alex Smith was quarterback. He made it to the playoffs, and he blew game after game after playoff game. He would get bounced in the wild card round and the divisional round. They blew a 21-7 lead against, or 28-7 lead against the Tennessee Titans, and Marcus Mariota and Mike Mularkey was the head coach. He did the same exact thing. Nothing changed until he got the best freaking quarterback, freaking talent quarterback of all time in Patrick Mahomes, and then he won 2 Super Bowls, and now he has 3, and 2 of those Super Bowls came from against who, Jay? Against the 49ers.
Who is that?
Against the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, who you can argue that the only guy maybe in the league in recent years, in the last 20 years, who has a bigger history of choking and blowing games and that can't close games than Andy Reid is Kyle Shanahan. So it's we're worried about things getting worse, but unless Kyle Shanahan finds himself a Patrick Mahomes, I don't think Kyle's winning a Super Bowl somewhere else. And I can promise you that Kyle isn't going to win a Super Bowl here, because clearly the way that, with his philosophy that he thinks is 100% right, he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. Last year, he had the Avengers. He literally had the Avengers. Chase Young, Bosa, Fred Warner, Greenlaw. Still, Chase Young compared to Nick Bosa being out, Yuto Gross-Matos is not bad. I'll give him some props. But
Gross-Matos been showing out.
He has been showing out. But last year, you had a freaking squad on your team, Jay, and you still couldn't pull it off with the way that you want to have your philosophy and run your team. If you're not willing to adjust in this league, you're going to fall behind, my friend. And Kyle hasn't done it. If he couldn't do it the last 2 years, the final way I'll say this, I'll cut this off right here, because I've been going on for a little bit too long, Jay. If Kyle couldn't do it before and he's not willing to change his philosophies, he's not going to be able to do it next year, because Kyle's not going to change his philosophy. After 3 Super Bowl losses, you would think, you know what, I got to look myself in the mirror and be like, you know what, it's not working. But no, Kyle comes out and does the same things over and over and over and over and over and over again. So
I guess his reasoning for doing it over and over and over is he has been successful. I mean, we've been the second best team in the last 5 years. This is like the only this is the only down year since the pandemic year. That's why I'm willing to give him another chance. There's a track record. We may not agree with his philosophy. It has worked to a certain point. It hasn't gotten us over the top. Look at your face of me. But this is why this is where the confidence is. I mean, everything went wrong this year. It's not an excuse. It's part of the story. And I guess what's going to change next year?
What's going to change next year? That's a really good question, Jay.
I hope so. Jordan Mason's going to be a restricted free agent.
I hope Brian Schneider's gone. Please, for the love of God, get Brian Schneider out.
Coordinator should be gone. Sorensen should be gone. Mm-hmm. So those two things will change right there. CMC will be back. He should be healthy. He's going to have damn near 9 months off. I mean, he should be healthy. Will he be back to all pro form? I don't know, but he was good. He looked good in Buffalo before he got tripped up. So you're going to have CMC back. I agree with what McNiner said. Maybe Tayshaun has lost his edge and his confidence. But maybe in a reduced role, he can be okay. We know he's going to be on the squad next year.
You know what it is, Jay? You notice how Debo, when he was really at his peak, his Twitter profile was 19 problems, and then and his number was 19, and then all of a sudden this year he's like, I'm Debo Samuel Sr. And then he changed his number to number 1, and this year he's been playing like a senior. Like, he's not doing anything at all.
That's Cody. He plays like a senior.
There is no aura when Debo walks on the field. Like before, 19 problems, 3rd and 7, and it was a divisional round in the snow. Kyle's running that shit with Debo on a 3rd and 7 in the snow to ice the game to get Robbie going in the field goal position. Now it's like, Debo, please catch the ball or stop punching dudes. Like it's Debo with the number 1. Like it's not it. I'm not blaming the number exactly, but it's just, yeah, Debo, since the number changed to Debo Samuel Sr., I'm number 1. It's not. He hasn't been playing.
So next year, I'm looking forward to CMC. Brock Purdy. I mean, this has been a terrible sample size. You look at the since Baltimore Christmas night to now, it's been what we're not accustomed to. I'll say that. And he has somewhat regressed. Maybe it's the shoulder, maybe it's the talent around him. So I'm looking forward to Purdy getting paid. The contract talk is all behind him. He comes in healthy, ready to go, and maybe he can have another 30 touchdowns, 8 INT type of season. If he does that, I think we're definitely in the playoffs and possibly going to the Super Bowl. This season, when Purdy doesn't turn the ball over, I believe we've won every game. I believe we won every game when he does not turn the ball over. So, I mean, that's a telling stat. Bosa will be back next year. Warner, Greenlaw will be back next year. Demo Lenore got paid. He'll be back. So I think the talent is there. I think. Do they still need to add some guys? Yeah, of course. But I want to give – if I was Jed York, I'm cutting the checks. I'd give Kyle one last season. That's what I would do. One last season next year.
Ben Johnson will be gone, Jay. Don't you guys get it? Like, we need Ben Johnson on this team. And for some reason, Niners fans aren't going to get it. Like, I'm telling you right now, Jay. Like, I could already see it. Like, I could already vision it. Kyle ends up making the playoffs next year, and we end up making it like the divisional round.
Almost there.
And then we're there, and then Kyle blows it again, and then Niners fans will be like, "Well, guys, he made it to the divisional round, and then again he blew the NFC Championship game or the divisional round." That's a successful season because George Kittle hurt his pinky toe, and he was out in the divisional game, and he still over. And through all of that, he still overcame and took this team to the playoffs, and we ended up blowing a lead again. Another successful season, Kyle. You're back again next year. We need to give him one more opportunity. It's like, come on, Jay. Enough is enough. If he couldn't do it then, he's not able to do it now.
Whenever Kyle gets talked about, it's always his usually his leadership or lack thereof gets talked about. And we love to say, well, like you just said, oh, well, if Debo notices that Kyle doesn't take responsibility or whatever, then why would you expect Debo to do that, or why do you expect Demo Lenore to not say, oh, the Cardinals beat us, they were lucky, yada yada yada. I think Jed York deserves some blame. You could make a case that, hey, maybe we should not have extended Kyle so many years after not winning the Super Bowl. Kyle thinks, hey, I'm a made man. I got my contract extended. I didn't even win the Super Bowl. Clearly, I'm doing really well. I think that's part of the problem as well. You're setting a precedent that his success is good enough when Jed York says, we don't hang NFC West championship banners. We hang Super Bowl banners. So why are you extending this guy if he hasn't been able to get the job done? So I think that's part of the problem. Why is Carroll so arrogant? He's already been rewarded for having success, but not attaining that final goal. So I think that's part of the problem, and that's not going to change next year. But so I think that adds to Kyle's arrogance for sure. And
That's
I think
that's a very valid point, Jay.
yeah, I mean, if someone's telling you, if my child is getting C pluses on every test, and I say, oh, you're doing hella good, you're doing really good, that I'm rewarding them for that. Why would they want to strive for more? And I'm not saying Kyle's purposely not trying to win a Super Bowl, but he feels like he's already been validated.
He feels like his method to get that C plus is good enough.
Exactly. And it's worked, but in those big moments where you need your offensive lineman to not make a critical mistake, or you need them to hold their block longer, they don't. And that's part of the problem. But yeah, I just think they have to get better. They have to get better. I mean, drafting another defensive tackle, defensive lineman. I mean, we've done that.
Jay, I actually have a question for you, Jay, because I was looking at it earlier today, and I was like, have the Niners just struggled this season, or has it also been like, obviously last year you make it to the Super Bowl, so like all is forgiven. But when you really look at it, going back to week 1 last year, because I was literally thinking about it earlier, and like I completely forgot we had a show, and I was like, oh crap, we have a show. Let me hop on. Let's go talk about this. But the Niners wins last year. You go into Pittsburgh, you blow out the Steelers. A Kenny Pickett led Steelers, not the Steelers this year. A team that was whatever, a playoff team I think last year, but not a team that you fear or you respected. The Steelers, you go and blow them out, right? You go and blow out the Steelers. You barely beat the Rams by 7, which is a close game. You beat the Giants, who were garbage. You beat the Cardinals. You blow the brakes off the Cowgirls. You lose to the Browns, which should have been a win if Jake Moody made that field goal. So I'm not going to blame Kyle there. Then you go down to Minnesota on Monday Night Football and you play the Vikings, who Kirk Cousins freaking had a game like prime Peyton Manning, which, people can have a game. But at the same time, Kyle's offense only put up 17 points because Brian Flores and his defensive game plan, they were in a chess match with Kyle and Brian Flores won the matchup, and Kyle made no adjustment to win the chess match. You only put up 17 points offensively. Then you lose to the Bengals. Joe Burrow, the Bengals, they did their thing against you. He was dicing you guys up. Lose that game. You have a bye week. You go and play the Jaguars, who are 6-3. The Niners are 6-3. You go and beat them by 31 points. Where are the Jaguars right now? Not a good team. The Jaguars last year, they made it to the playoffs, but nobody said the Jaguars really were a Super Bowl contender.
The Jags, they were broken by the 49ers. They were rolling into their bye week, and we stomped them out, and they ain't been the same since.
That's fair. Fine. I can give you that. We beat the Buccaneers. We beat the Seahawks, which we do every year. Mm-hmm. The one dominant win, which is against the Eagles. But we all know the Eagles' coaching issues last year that they had after they lost to the Niners. So then, the Niners broke the Eagles. Fair. We beat the Seahawks. We beat the Cardinals. Then we play the Ravens, another team that made it to the AFC Championship game, a formidable foe.
Yep.
We get embarrassed on Christmas Day against.
Yeah, Brock. That was one of Brock's worst.
Worst performance. We beat the Commanders the week after that. We lose to the Rams. Sam Darnold was starting. Divisional round, you barely beat the Packers, which honestly I don't even know how we did it, but you did. Right?
Brock's right arm did it.
In all honesty, we all that should have been a loss, right?
Yeah.
Then you come out and you beat the Lions, at which you
Barely.
were down, barely
Should have lost
skimmed by
that
the
game.
Lions, and then you lose to the Chiefs. So when you think about it, when I look at all of this going even back to last season, what really made the Niners to the Super Bowl last year, I don't think it was coaching. I don't think it was the way like the Niners necessarily played. I just think the talent that the Niners had was just a little bit, tad bit superior than the rest of the NFC. Because when you look at the Ravens and you go down the Ravens, who are also a talented team that are well coached, you got beat by them. But the Niners last year with Christian McCaffrey, first full season with Christian McCaffrey, kind of like what Saquon Barkley's doing in Philadelphia this year, right? Like where his first full season with Philadelphia, Philadelphia's offense is rolling. They're 10-2. They're going to be first seed. They're doing their thing this year, right? I don't think Saquon Barkley is going to have that effect next season. I think he might honestly get hurt next season, which I'm not wishing that upon him. But with the way that Saquon and running backs, them holding up, like I think he might get, honestly, with the way that they use him, he might, I wouldn't be surprised if he got hurt. But point being is that last year the Niners made it to the Super Bowl. So it ended up being a successful season. But when you look at how they barely made it and the games that they won and lost, except for that Philadelphia win, right, which was dominant, the Niners made it because they won because they were a more talented football team. They were a more talented football team than the teams that they played in the NFC. They weren't better in terms of coaching or in terms of scheme. They were better and they made it because you look at that Packers game, they weren't getting out. He wasn't out scheming. Steve Wilkes and Kyle weren't out scheming, Matt LaFleur and the Packers or the Lions and Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson had a freaking great game plan. Dan Campbell was just way too aggressive in that game and ended up costing them, and the Niners came back. But when I look at it last year, it was literally the talent that really propelled the Niners. Whereas you look at this season, even with the talent, in the beginning of this year, when we had a fully healthy squad, even without Christian McCaffrey, we were losing game after game after game after game after game.
But Ayuk wasn't the same. Ayuk was a shell of himself. He had like one great game this whole year.
And look at the Lions' injuries, Jay. Look at the Lions' injury that they have this year. They're still able to win games. We can't.
Their offensive weapons are still there. I know Montgomery got hurt. He's going to be out.
Montgomery got hurt.
Gibbs. They still got Gibbs.
They still have Gibbs, but you look at the injuries on their defensive line. You look at the injuries that they have. Their team is banged up also, Jay. Sam Laporta missed games. Like, they have injuries also, Jay.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so all I'm saying, the injury excuse is like...
No, but absolutely. But I want to address M27's comment. He says Trent held out because he had no guarantee money on his contract. I don't care. You're a captain of this team. You should have still been in training camp getting your body ready. Come on, man. Oh, Trent don't need no camp. He gonna be all right week one. Well, clearly that wasn't
gonna be all right. He was his body can't his age. Like, come on.
No, he needs to be in camp.
Yeah,
he should have been in camp. You're a captain. You have to set the example. That's why. That's something I'll never forget from Trent Williams. It doesn't. That's the contract that he and his representation negotiated. You're going to get all this buku money up front the first 3 years, and in the last 3 years, you have no guaranteed money left. That's the contract that he and his representation negotiated. So they already knew that. Like I have less respect for that than what BA did, even though I would rather have BA still working out in training camp, gaining that rapport, because there's no doubt that played a factor into the season. That was part of the reason. That
Jay, what do you expect, bro? Jay, what do you expect from a guy like Trent? A guy like Trent's gonna want his money. He wants his guaranteed money because, like, if he got hurt, which he did this year, he's guaranteed to get his bag no matter what, right?
And that's cool for Trent. That's cool, and that's also part.
But that's who Kyle decided to make captain. So how if you can?
Well, isn't captain voted on by the players, teammates?
I mean,
Trent says the right things. He's a captain, but you're supposed to lead by example, and you should have been there in the trenches with your brothers in training camp. That was part of the reason why the season didn't go the way it should have. BA, same thing. Like that's part of it. You can't just not practice, not be in training camp, and then just expect to hit the ground running. We've seen where that doesn't materialize. So, and I hold him to a high standard. He's a captain. He's the greatest left tackle ever. Like I know we love to throw that around, but that's part of the reason. Like you talk about leadership from Kyle. What about the players? You got to show up and do the work. You can't just show up on game day. I mean, come on, man. No, but
that's fair.
you did so in that soliloquy that you just had about the losses and we was lucky and all this. What was your question? Because you did say you had a question for me.
Jay, my question is that the Niners won. Yes, they made it to the Super Bowl, but it was because of the talent that they had on their team. And the talent that they had on their team sometimes, right, like, how would I say it? Like the Brooklyn Nets, right, when they had Harden, Kyrie, and KD. You might be playing the Warriors, right? You might be playing the Warriors of the 2022 Warriors that ended up winning the championship, and you might beat them on a particular night because you have those three players that might be more talented than their top three players. But at the end of the day, how well-rounded are you as a team, right? How well-rounded are you with your five starters? How well of the chemistry do your five starters have, right? Because at the end of the day, in a 7-game series, your five starters are going to end up winning you the game, or your bench is going to end up winning you the game. It's not just going to be your three main guys, right? Whereas with the Niners, they won last year, which I don't even think they should have been able to the Super Bowl because we honestly could have lost both of those games. They weren't impressed. They weren't dominant victories in any sort of way. But you look at when that talent isn't performing this year with Debo or whoever it might be, when the talent isn't performing this year, this team is not it. And the NFC got better. Right, and the question that I have for you, Jay, is that I don't think this team is going to get better next year. I don't think this team is going to be more talented than it was even compared to this year or even last year. I don't think this team is going to get more talented than it was next year, right? So, I think personally the Niners made it this far because of the talent, but if they're not going to be more talented next year, and then you're coaching obviously with Kyle, it's like he got outcoached last year multiple times in the playoffs. He's been outcoached this year multiple times. I'm on the fire Kyle train, but I don't know what's going to be different to where it's going to have a positive impact.
Well, if Kyle fires a special teams coordinator, then you would hope he brings in someone that would elevate the special teams.
You would hope that, Jake, but he brought Brandon Staley in after blowing another Super Bowl.
No.
What does that tell you about Kyle?
This is what the players wanted. Bosa's calling out
Brandon Staley.
Well, no. Well, Bosa wasn't feeling Steve Wilkes. Bosa's saying, "Oh, we weren't expecting this. We weren't expecting that." Bosa, just get the quarterback. That's your job, man. You an edge rusher. Go get the quarterback.
Jay, but he wasn't feeling Steve Wilkes.
Kyle got rid of Steve because we lost the Super Bowl, right? And supposedly they didn't get along. Well, okay. Not all players were on board with sideline Steve. We know that. Okay, so let's bring a guy who already knows the system. He's going to be better than Steve Wilkes. Now, if Dre Greenlaw was healthy the entire year, I think this defense would have been much better. I think we could agree on that. But I think they're going to bring in someone else, a defensive coordinator, and that should elevate the squad.
It would be less surprising to me if Kyle promoted Brandon Staley than if he were to bring out and go outside the organization to bring in another defensive coordinator. And the issue with Kyle and the way that the Niners even run their defense is they want it run in their particular scheme in the way that they want it ran.
Well, Staley's defense, wasn't he the defensive coordinator when the Rams won the Super Bowl?
He was, and then he went to the Chargers, and the defense has been abysmal.
So he wasn't a good head coach. Well, he was an excellent defensive coordinator with the Rams. He sucked as a head coach with the Chargers.
And he was calling plays on the defense for the Chargers.
Yeah.
And the Chargers defense wasn't good. And when you look at that year that they won the Super Bowl, who was on that defensive line? Aaron freaking Donald and Von Miller.
Yeah.
It
was his scheme that they were able to exploit and get sacks on the quarterback.
I can't.
Did the Chargers get blown out yesterday? How'd that defense look yesterday? Didn't the Chargers get blown out?
They're a top 5 ranked defense in the league this year, Jay. They got blown out yesterday, but they're a top 5 ranked defense. And he went up against a Tampa Bay offense with the Mike Evans back, and the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator has been doing really good this year. Liam Cohen or something like that. He's been on fire this year.
If it's the top 5 defense, I mean, they should be able to put the clamps on, Baker Mayfield. I mean,
Jay, but they've been.
I know Baker's having a hell of a season.
You're gonna have your bad games, Jay, but they've been pretty good for the majority of the season. Look at the game last week against Kansas City. They held Kansas City 17? They did that twice this year, right? So they're having they're still a
But Kansas
City.
City, do you think Kansas City is hella good? I mean, they've won a lot of close games. It seems like they always make plays when they really matter the most. They've had some luck on their side.
Bingo, Jay. They make plays when it really matters. And with Mahomes, Mahomes is not an MVP this year. He's not playing like an MVP. But one thing is that game on the line, 5 seconds left, you need that buzzer beater, MJ crossover against Utah Jazz to win the game. Mahomes is going to hit that jumper. 9 times out of 10, I feel confident that Mahomes is going to get that jumper and he's going to hit it.
Would you believe me if I told you the LA Chargers have not beaten a playoff team this entire year? Would you believe me if I told you that?
Yes, I would believe you. I do believe you that if you told me that, because that's why you're bringing it up, Jay. Would you believe me being inflexible? I'm like, yeah, I would, Jay, because why else would you say that? Why else would you say that, Jay?
But look at their schedule. They ain't playing nobody, man.
I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl contender, but they're so much better with Harbaugh and with Jesse Minter, who was the Michigan defensive coordinator, than they were with Staley calling plays on the defense. Their defense is top 5 ranked in the league.
Their defense is better with relatively the same players. Yes, no, there's no doubt about that. But when you look at who they play, what's their signature win? They have none. They ain't beat nobody.
I'm not saying they're a player. I'm not saying they're a contender or nothing. But the improvement on the defense when Staley was there compared to now is a much bigger, significant improvement compared to even when the Niners have Staley and they added him to this defense. The Niners defensive ranks from like a top 5 defense is now ranked like 20th, somewhere like just middle of the pack. And even though Sorensen's calling plays, like it's Jay, that's the thing, Jay. Ben Johnson is gonna be gone. Like Kyle John, Jed. Ben Johnson's gonna be gone, y'all. Like we're gonna have one more year of Kyle Shanahan, and the same thing is gonna happen. And we're gonna be like,
the dream is gonna say, "I told you so."
I want a Super Bowl, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. Like, listen, honestly, like if I have a son or a daughter and they want to become a Niners fan, and we still haven't won a Super Bowl by that time period, I'm just gonna be like, don't do it, guys. Like,
we're gonna be Raiders fans.
Like, I'm not gonna be a Raiders fan. I'm still loyal to the Niners, right? I'm still loyal to the Niners. I just don't have expectations until Kyle's gone. Like, I have no expectations of winning a Super Bowl because I don't see how things are gonna be better. But like, if I have a kid and they want to be a Niners fan, I'm just like, you might want to look into that. Like, if we haven't won a Super Bowl up until that point, if it's like 10, 15 years from now, and we still haven't won a Super Bowl, we're like, yeah, like I get it. It's nice being a faithful. And it's nice being faithful, but it's a lot of heartbreak that comes with it.
That's part of being a fan. I mean, I think you could ask any fan base other than the Chiefs, would you take the Niners' last 5 seasons over your team season? I'm sure a lot of fans would say, yeah. You had an opportunity. You were in the Super Bowl.
They don't get it, Jay. No, I 100% disagree. The only reason I'm saying
you gotta be a Raider fan. You gotta be.
Jay, let's put it like this. Here's the analogy I'll give you. To play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Jay, we have one straight up ugly dude, and we have one dude that like he looks alright. Okay. Now the ugly dude knows even if he goes to the party or he goes to prom, he's not getting a date. He's not getting a date. It's not happening. So he doesn't have to deal with the fear of being rejected. Because he's not, there's no expectations of him getting a date regardless. Okay. Now, the Niners, on the other hand, like, they're up and down. They have good days where, like, their skin has some acne. There's other days where, like, their skin is glowing. They're doing their thing. Now, the Niners, somehow, they start off bad throughout the year, and they somehow sneak in to the party, and they get into the party.
I mean, sneak in. I mean, we were pretty good in the regular season.
They get in, right? They get in, fine. Sneak in, they get in. They get into the party.
They were like 12 games or something.
And like they get into the party and they shoot their shot at the fine girl and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm the Niners. I like you, and they just fall short every single time. And the girl's just like, nah, I'm good.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's what I would say to that. Hey, and back to them Chargers.
The same way each time, expecting it to be different.
This is what the chat really wants to know about them. Go Chargers, go! They've
Go
lost 2 straight
Chargers.
games. They're 4-3 at home. Like, get this Chargers team out of here. They're not that good. They ain't beat nobody. All the teams that they play that are actually good, they allow more than 27 points. Come on, man. But nah, I think Staley, I don't know what he'll bring to this 49ers defense. I have no idea. But I think under Shanahan, we got a shot. We got a shot. Now, I know you'd rather take Ben
We do
Johnson right
not, Jay.
now.
We do not, Jay. I'm saying right, the Niners fans, we do not have a shot with Kyle.
You're like a shot to do what? Losing the Super Bowl again?
Don't get your hopes up, guys. Like, I've seen how the story plays out. It's not going to end up well for you. Like it hurts.
I love your analogy because it's perfect for the Niners. You want them to get rid of Shanahan, a guy who's probably he probably has the second most wins in 49ers history, who's been, multiple Super Bowl appearances over the last 5 years. And that's fact, right? But then the other side is Jed is happy with Shanahan. And I think the reality is the facts I just said. Jed's going to keep him because Jed has already validated Kyle, and there's no way he's going to fire him. I think he's going to give him a reprieve for this year. I think that's reality. And based off everything that happened in the season, I think it's fair. Now, will I agree with this decision 2-3 years from now? I don't know.
No Niners fans gonna agree with it 2-3 years from now. I'm saying it right now. That's how confidently I'm saying this, Jay. I don't say things this confidently, Jay. I am not that confident like that. I am saying this with my chest out like this. Kyle will be fired. If not next year, the year after that. I will 100% guarantee it. Kyle, okay, even if Jed is happy with him for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, they'll never win a Super Bowl.
You will not win a Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan as your head coach. It will not happen. As long as he's the 49ers head coach, Kyle will not be able to win a Super Bowl. And as long as I know that, I don't need to have him on my team as my head coach because I know he can't do it.
And you feel that way because what? Lack of leadership, lack of accountability,
lack of leadership, lack of ownership, lack of taking responsibility, his personality, like his decision making, things like putting Jordan Mason in the game aren't even your injuries or things like that. Things like putting Jordan Mason in the game are just common sense. It's like,
and that's indefensible.
That's not defendable. You would do that, Jay. Anybody would do that. Jay, Niners fans that are watching the game are like, why are we putting in Jordan Mason? That makes no sense. And you look at, and like Jay, one last point. It's like you watch the rest of the league, Jay, and you look at like the Lions, who are top of the NFC, who are killing it. They have a 2 running back system with, they call it Knuckles and Sonic, right? Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. You have Knuckles and Sonic in your backfield and Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, right? And sometimes, like, Jordan Mason he's finding the running lanes, or he's running a little bit harder and he gets yardage. But instead, you refuse to use Knuckles and you want to use Sonic all the damn time. And it's like, those things are just indefendable. And if you refuse to acknowledge that that's a problem and you don't make any adjustments, those are things about Kyle that, like, that's not coaching. That's not injuries. That has nothing to do with how talented your roster is. That is simply Kyle being stubborn as hell. And it's his philosophy. It's my way or the highway. I'm going to win it my way.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of what you said is definitely hard to argue with. But I think the reality is that Jed is thrilled, and I think he's going to give him another shot. And will it work out? I mean, time will tell. I guess we'll see, man.
Jay, why do I do this to myself, Jay? Why do I do this to myself?
It's good to me that you get this out of your system. It's not good to harbor all these thoughts. It's good to get it out, man, for StreamYard, for YouTube, for the faithful, for the Niner Empire. It's good to want York to fire Shanahan, but I think the reality is we've been really successful.
It's not going to happen. Yeah,
it's not going to happen. I'm looking more realistic, and I totally get all your concerns. That you can't really defend it. I mean, just not playing multiple running backs is just ridiculous, especially a guy coming off who missed half the season. Like, come on. Like, the way Greenlaw played, that's how you should do with CMC. Give him a few series, put Mason in. Speaking of Mason, he's going to be a restricted free agent this offseason.
He's
If
gone.
I was
Jay.
Jordan Mason, if
Yeah,
I was
he's
his
gone.
family, if I was his agent, there's no way I would resign with the Niners. Why? He's not going to play you.
Yeah.
If CMC's healthy, you're getting 2-3 carries a game. Like, that's ridiculous. So I hope the best for Jordan Mason.
I hope Jordan Mason goes and balls out on another team.
Yeah, hopefully he balls out on another
caliber
team.
running back. Go ball out.
Go to the Raiders. They need a running back. Go to the Raiders, man. Sign a.
We don't like the Raiders. We don't like the Raiders. Anybody.
Hey, I don't care. I just want him to get opportunities. He's proved he's deserving.
Hey, watch him go to Seattle or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we're just like, oh, great.
To us. So, hey, real quick, who do you think is going to win the NFC West?
Oh, the Rams. The Rams are winning the NFC West. That's
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let me look it up real quick. Okay, NFC. Right now, the Rams, they're 8-6. They're tied with Seattle, but the Rams already beat Seattle, right?
Yeah, they beat Seattle. Seattle's not a good team. Seattle is our pretenders. Geno Smith is not. He had the whole thing last year. Ride him off. Like he struggles against really good teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Seahawks are not. They're pretenders. The Rams, though, they can win a playoff game here, and like they might be able to win the wild card game, maybe make it a divisional round, even maybe sneak in an NFC Championship game. But like, no, the Rams with Stafford and their whole squad, like they're winning the NFC West.
Who would have thought that at the beginning of the year? Rams would win the NFC West. They won 3 straight, so they're peaking at the right time. So that's gonna be interesting. Did you get a chance to watch the Monday night games tonight?
Who wants to watch Monday night games tonight, Jay? Like, I was just checking on my fantasy teams, making sure they're all right. But like, besides that, Jay.
Speaking of fantasy, man, straight out of the Bay, whoo, your teacher's killing it, man.
He's killing it.
I'm killing it too in a bad way.
You killing it 3-11. Just for the people at home, like Jay was supposed to be first in our league.
That's what Yahoo said.
He was supposed to go 13-1, and then he ended up going 3-11. So
it was a definitely a tough year of fantasy for me. It was like watching the Niners play every Sunday. That was my fantasy basically. So it was pretty terrible. I actually won this past Sunday, so that's good. But speaking of winning, do you think the Niners should try to win the rest of these games, or
hell no? I thought they should. I'm so glad they lost the Rams game.
But McNiner said we have a 0.1 chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, you don't have a chance of making the playoffs, so tank. Get a draft pick. Why are we trying to win? Like, lose to the Dolphins. Like, and that's the thing. Kyle ain't gonna do that. Kyle has the ego. He's gonna make sure he beats McDaniels. And that's also another conversation, Jay. He's like, should the Niners play their starters the remainder of the games? No. Let Fred get some extra rest. Let Greenlaw get some extra rest. Let Hufanga rest his broken hand. Like, no. Why?
I think Hufanga is a free agent, so I'm sure he's gone next year. So I'm sure he's going to want to put out the best film he can. Fred is already paid. Bosa's already paid. They shouldn't play. Man.
Like, yeah.
Greenlaw's probably going to play, I would imagine, because he's a free agent next year as well. I'm trying to think. I mean, Kittle, I think that he's only 140 receiving yards away from a 1,000-yard season, so maybe he wants to get that. But you just hope that there's no injuries. I still want to see the team be competitive. I mean, here's what I say. I want them to be competitive. If they lose, okay, but at least be competitive. Don't just, lay down.
Don't lay down, but at the same time, don't play your starters that might get hurt or that for no reason, right? Like, watch you play Fred Warner, and Fred Warner ends up hurting his ankle more, and he's out for the beginning of the season because you played him in 3 meaningless games.
In a meaningless game.
Yeah, those are things that are easily avoidable.
Yeah.
That if you end up doing and it ends up hurting you, then it's like, come on, Kyle. Like, those are things that are going to affect you next season. And like Barry at Throwbacks had a really good comment. He said, I'm going to the Monday night game against the Lions earlier this year. I definitely was thinking it was going to be a much more meaningful game. We all did. We all looked at that Lions game. We're like, this is going to be a game that might decide the NFC.
Yeah.
And ended up.
I took that day off from work. but I canceled that. I was like, yeah, that's not going to be worth watching. Yeah, I mean, who would have thought? Like at the beginning of the year, we were thinking that this team, NFC West champions, going back to the Super Bowl or NFC Conference champions, something. But
yeah, it took the Niners 4 years to make it back after 2019. So it tells you what it like that. That pretty much sums it up. Except for Kansas City, it's not easy to make it back to the Super Bowl every single year.
I know. I heard it's hard to do that.
Yeah, it is pretty hard. Yeah, it is pretty hard. Not an easy thing to do.
So is it still true that the last Super Bowl losers the following year they don't go to the playoffs? I think that streak. I don't know if it's still ongoing. Because I remember there's a.
No, it's not, because Philadelphia made the playoffs last year and they lost to Tampa, I think.
Right. Yeah, and they lost like in the first round, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Please, Niners, lose to the Dolphins. The Niners, please lose to the Dolphins. I'm telling you right now, like Grandize is gonna be happy. You know, Mike McDaniels has himself a game. Tua throws for like 4 touchdowns. Let Tua have himself a game. Like he threw 3 interceptions last week. Like, you know, let him get some touchdowns this week. Let him go and torch the Niners. I'm okay with that. Jalen Waddle puts up 2 touchdowns, gets me some fantasy points for the playoffs.
I know you love that.
My team name for fantasy is Then He Waddled Away. So, like, even though Jalen Waddle hasn't done much this year, but, like, go crazy against my team, and then Niners end up with a top 12 draft pick, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Real quick, I just remembered. So for Purdy, you were saying 3-year, $100 million, like Baker Mayfield deal.
120, 130, yeah, 330.
So let's say 3-year, 120. That'd be about $40 million a year. I think that's solid. I think Purdy and his representation are going to go up to 60, 65. They're going to try to get Dak. I think that's kind of ridiculous. But there's
it's not. We get where Purdy's coming from, because if you're Purdy, you want to get, like, Purdy trying to get his bag, right? But if you're the Niners and you're logically smart about it, and Grandizer hates when I bring up Miami and Tua. He hates it, and I apologize for doing it again. But, like, paying Tua that much, and, like, regardless of the concussions and the injuries, because we want that for no player. And, like, people are talking about Tua quitting as if that was an easy decision. Like, no, it's not. Like, leaving the game of football, even with the injuries, and, like, leaving your brothers, especially when you love a sport, that's not an easy decision. But, like, Tua and how the Dolphins struggle against teams that are above 500, Tua also, his stats in those games where he's struggling and throwing interceptions, and he has more interceptions than touchdowns. Like,
when he can't play in cold weather either.
You can't play in cold weather, and, like, paying Tua that much money, and then knowing that with Tua under center, if you have to play the Bills in the playoffs, the Ravens in the playoffs, the Chiefs in the playoffs, the Bengals in the playoffs, you can't beat those teams in the playoffs, right? With Tua under center. The same thing with the Niners. Like, yeah, I don't mind paying Brock 3-year, 130, 140, but if you lock him in for 6 years and his shoulder injury lingers, or, you know, he gets hurt or tears it, whatever the case might be, right? You're not committed to him for 6 years, $60 million, where you might have to cut him on his 4th or 5th year. You're committed to him for 2-3 years. For 3 years tops, and it's not affecting your cap that much, where it's only like 40, 45 million. It's not the Dolphins only, Grandize. It's not the Dolphins that can't play in the cold only. I just don't think Tua elevates his game against top level teams. I think I think he's like Dak against good teams.
And those questions are true about Brock too. Like, oh, if it's cold weather, or not necessarily cold weather, but if it's rainy weather, he struggles. So I mean, I think the Niners, they don't want a repeat of last season, because Brock would be dumb. Brock would be dumb to play. To go to training camp without a contract extension. I don't think he's going to do that. So I think the Niners Brock will probably start at 60, but maybe they settle between 45 and 55, maybe something like that. I mean, I think when you see other quarterbacks who don't have the same accolades that Brock has, like they played in a Super Bowl, been to multiple NFC championship games, other quarterbacks can't say that, but they've gotten the bag. They're making 50+ mil per year. So it would be Brock's representation are definitely going to aim for that. But for people who say, well, Brock doesn't deserve it, I mean, I guess that's a whole different story. You could say the same thing about Trevor Lawrence. You say
Trevor didn't deserve it.
No. But I guess because I guess owners, they either you pay a guy for what he's shown you, and you think he can elevate, but at least you know what you're going to get, or you start all over. You draft a rookie, and you could get a Justin Fields, you could get a Trey Lance, you could get a Zach Wilson, you can get all these Mac Jones, all these
But
busts.
Jay, it's
Daniel
okay to
Jones.
go do that. It's
Say that
okay
again?
to go. It's okay to do that,
Oh,
but at the same time, with the Trey Lance, like I would, for example, with the Trey Lance, I don't think necessarily the pick was wrong, right? But with a guy like Trey Lance, you draft a quarterback like Trey Lance to be on a team like the Jaguars, a team that's growing and a team that's not a playoff team, and a team that's, trying to get better, and a team that's kind of get back into playoff contention. Not necessarily last year, but this year, right? Like you draft a rookie quarterback so that when they develop, your team is also developing, and
kind
you're
of like
getting
how
better.
Denver did with Bo
Right, like
Nix.
Denver did, right? Like with Bo Nix, right? And Bo Nix is a little bit different because he's coming first year and he's doing his thing and he's slinging his rock, but he was like a 4-year starter, I think, in college, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like you expect Trey Lance. I'm not blaming it all on Trey or blaming it all on the Niners, but when you're a Super Bowl team, you go out and you lack a quarterback, you go out and do what the Rams did by going out and getting Matthew Stafford, who can win you a Super Bowl in that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year period. He can go out and do that. But instead, the Niners said, we're going to put our eggs in one basket and go and get a D2 quarterback and start him and expect him to go out. And which is somewhat fair, I guess, when you draft a quarterback, you expect him to live up to expectations. But guys need time to adjust in this league, right? Josh Allen, if he was on the Niners, people would
He would
probably...
have been a bust.
Yeah, he would have been a bust in the Niners. Josh Allen throwing interceptions. He can't read defenses. He's not good. But on a team like the Bills, you give Josh Allen 4 or 5 years, and now look at what Josh Allen's doing, right?
Yeah.
So, like...
And also, real quick, Kyle, he doesn't want an established quarterback. He wants a guy that he can mold and dictate what the play is. Don't deviate from that. Like, that's why he didn't want TB12, because TB12 would have told him, oh, this is what we're running. Like, but Kyle doesn't want that. And that goes back to what you said earlier. It's Kyle's way or no way.
Mm-hmm. And I see your comment, Grandizer, and I like, that's fair, because I don't watch Dolphins games. I don't watch the all 22. I do see the stuff on social media, so that's fair. That's valid. I just don't think you can win a Super Bowl with Tua, but I also understand the alternative side of what Tua's bad games and when he struggles, and when you look at like a guy like Skylar Thompson or whoever they else have, like their offense isn't even able to move down the field without Tua. So like, yeah. I get it, and I don't watch all 22. I don't watch Dolphins football games, so as someone who is a Dolphins fan, he probably knows it much better than I do. So like, I'm not going to argue against it.
Yeah, unfortunately, with like you need your quarterback to elevate. You need them to play their best. But it's true. You do need your teammates to elevate and play their best too. And I just hate the notion, put his team on his back, because you can elevate, but that doesn't mean you're doing everything by yourself. You still need the O-line to block. You still need things to go well around you. But in Tua's biggest moments or playoff moments, have they won a playoff game with Tua? I'm not sure.
Sorry, again. Like, I gotta say it again. The Dolphins haven't won a playoff game since like the last 20 years, I think. Like, when was the last time they won a playoff game? I'm genuinely curious. Like, when was the last time? Or was it did they win one? They had to have won one. Or am I like tripping? Or has it been since
Marino?
It's 2002. I'm sorry. Like, why am I always put in this predicament where I gotta throw shade on the
Dolphins? The Dolphins last one. The Dolphins last won a playoff game in 2000.
Like, I was off by a year. Jay. Come on, Jay. You putting me in these situations.
Wait, so in 2001, you weren't even born.
I wasn't even alive, Jay. I wasn't even alive.
So, I mean, it has been a minute. But so for Tua in the playoffs, he's lost to the Bills and the Chiefs. I mean, that's expected, right? I mean, the Dolphins aren't going to go on the road and beat Buffalo or KC. So,
okay, listen, I'm okay with you losing those games, but at the same time, like, I expect your quarterback to go up and at least elevate and play to a certain standard. And Tua, he struggles. Let's put it like that. In the most nicest way possible, he struggles, right? Against really good
defenses.
defenses, or like, and that's the thing. In the playoffs, you need, even if you lose, that's fine. But if you have a game like Josh Allen, where, or like even Purdy in the Super Bowl, where you throw like 4 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns, and you have a clean game, and your team ends up losing, that's not really on you, right? As long as you're doing everything you can. But at the same time,
That yeah.
Tua will have games like against really good teams, and he'll struggle like against last week against Houston, where he's throwing interceptions, he has bad decision making, and those are things that when I see it consistently, or when I see it against good teams consistently, those are things that are a little bit concerning. It's not something that Tua can't fix. It's just those are things where you're like you have a team around you, and now it's up to you to like at least, even if you end up losing, obviously the Bills and the Chiefs are not easy teams to beat, or the Ravens, but at least you're playing clean football, I would say.
Yeah. No, to be fair, that 2023 playoff game, Tua didn't even play.
It was Skylar
So
Thompson.
he wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah, he
Skylar
said it right there in
Thompson.
the chat.
And also the Finns only lost by 3. To be fair, so but yeah, he was terrible against the Chiefs last season. He was terrible, and they lost 26-7. So I mean, he's only 0-1, so he's just yet to prove it. But unfortunately, that's how kind of the NFL is. You're successful or you're unsuccessful until you're successful. So, but he's only had one bite at the apple. So
That's true,
but,
but that AFC, man, it's a rough division. Like the AFC conference is
yeah,
a rough conference. Like you have to go through juggernauts in order to make it a Super
yeah.
Bowl.
And I just feel
Yeah.
like teams would rather pay someone they know and they think they can elevate than to basically start all over.
That's fair,
And
and even at ownership, from like ownership's perspective,
yeah,
like I'd rather give Tua
that's
200
yeah,
million or Brock
and
200 million, because I know people will come into the seats and fill out the seats.
exactly, and that's part of it too.
200 million, yeah,
That's part of it too. That's why the Giants signed Daniel Jones, which was obviously the wrong decision.
yeah.
Because you can either strike out, or you can get a Bo Nix, or you can get a Jaden Daniels. But yeah, you still got to put butts in the seats, and honestly, you have to have a high draft pick. Like if you're picking 17, do you really? There won't be a quarterback available in the first
Broncos
round.
found Bowen like pick 12, so like never say never, never say never.
Wait,
But like it's
say
not
that again.
likely. It's not likely. I mean, like the Broncos got Bo Nix at
Bo
like pick
Nix at
12.
12. Yeah,
It's not like it's not impossible, but it's not likely either, right? You want one of the
right.
top 2 or 3 guys, but it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not always
And
possible.
ideally, that's what you would sell to an owner. Oh, we're going to get rid of our franchise quarterback Daniel Jones, but it's okay because we're going to have a top 2-3 pick, and we're going to select the best quarterback. But if you're like picking in the teens, it's less desirable because you're like, oh, well, this guy, if he's so good, why isn't he going top 5? Like, so it's interesting. I think we stick with Brock though. I would pay him close to what he wants. I don't want a fiasco in the offseason again next year. There should be no contract disputes. And I think I'm paying the guy that I know that I've seen excel when he has the pieces around him. He struggled. Will his arm strength get better? Probably not. Will he be able to throw a wet ball? Probably not. I mean, but I guess that's the person we know, and I would rather go with that than start over. But I agree with what Larry Krueger said. You should still draft a quarterback like every year, develop them, and possibly trade them. Or if they're better than Brock, that could happen too. So, but anything else you got to get off your chest of mean the dream? Hey man, real quick, I appreciate you coming through, man. On this show, we've been talking, chatting it up, hour and 40 minutes. This is very therapeutic for me. I'm
Man,
sure
I need to get it out, man. So like,
you got
I
to
gotta
get it
go
out.
study. I gotta go study for finals after this. I'm gonna be pulling an all nighter after this, but like, I gotta let it out. This is like what I gotta let out, because this is like the Niners.
Same here.
Frustrating. So yeah, it's nice to let it out after a couple of weeks. It's been. When was the last time we talked?
It's been a minute. November? Yeah, early November.
Yeah, it was like maybe it might have been before the Packers game. It was probably before the Packers game.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jay.
And I was like, we're gonna win.
Yeah.
Jordan Love ain't all that. Well, Jordan Love is good, but the Packers, they weren't unbeatable, but clearly they kicked our ass. So
yeah, like I don't know why I do it to myself. I really don't. Like, here's what I say. People are like, people are like, that's what I'm saying. Like, people are like, oh, they feel bad for Cowboys fans, and like, the Cowboys know they ain't winning Super Bowl every single year. If you're delusional as a Cowboys fan if you think you're gonna win a Super Bowl with Dak and Jerry Jones as ownership and you bringing in Mike McCarthy as your head coach after what he did against the Packers last year, like, you're delusional if you think you're winning a Super Bowl, right? No matter what your record says. The Niners, on the other hand, will like struggle in the beginning of the year. They go on like a 10-game win streak, and then they'll have games like against the Lions where like they'll be down 20 and they'll come back and end up winning, and you're like, this is our year. It's destiny. It's like if God has it stamped that we are going to win the 2023-2024 Super Bowl, like, this is our year. Like, there's no other reason why we would beat the Dolphins or like the Lions and come back by like 30. This is our year, just for your dreams and your hopes to get crushed in the same exact way.
It's yeah. I mean,
see, I said Dolphins while I was saying Lions. Like, the Dolphins just, man, like, they just be.
If you're not a fan of the Chiefs, then you've had a terrible decade, right?
Or Patriots. No, Patriots. If you're a fan of the Patriots, you've been good also.
Patriots, in the last 10 years, did TB win one?
Last 10 years? Yeah, he did. Seattle.
That was in 2014?
14, yeah.
Maybe, okay. All right.
14, they won against the Falcons.
So one other team. Okay, so two teams. I mean, but, we'll see. It's going to be interesting next year. We'll see what happens. We'll see what talent they bring on. But hey, I real quick, I just want to appreciate everyone who tuned into the stream, who left comments. We appreciate you guys watching straight out of the Bay. This will probably be the last stream this year for us, and then we'll see what happens next year. The Dream, good luck on your finals, man. Hopefully you ace that. And go ahead, close us out, man, the way you do.
Bang, 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 Niner gang. Like, the energy isn't there. Bang, bang, Niner gang. Like, we're done, guys. The season's over. I've been waiting for this all year, man. Like, finally, I get to go on winter break.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done, man. Like, it's over. Season's over. I'm ready for the playoffs. Let me enjoy the playoffs. Go Lions this year for the playoffs. Let them get their Super Bowl. Their fan base in their city after 30 years of playoff droughts and heartbreaks. Like, let them get.
I think Buffalo may have.
Or Buffalo. I'm cool with Buffalo. I'm cool with Buffalo. Anybody but the Kansas City Chiefs. They should not.
I would agree with that. Anybody but the
repeat for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Completely agree. Hey, man.
Philly. Frick Philly. Like, I don't like Philly.
Yeah, I don't like Philly either.
Yeah, so Philly and Kansas City. If they don't win the Super Bowl, I'm good.
So if it's Detroit versus Buffalo, that should be a pretty good Super Bowl.
And one last thing, Grant said, you could root for the Rams too as a backup, or Eagles, no Rams because they're divisional.
Yeah.
So yeah, no Eagles, no Rams. Anybody but the Chiefs, and I would say the Eagles from the NFC, and the Rams because they're in my division, or like the Seahawks if they end up winning first seed. So if the Seahawks end up winning their first seed in the NFC West and they sneak into the playoffs, I wouldn't want the Seahawks to win either. So not for my division, not the Eagles, not the Chiefs. Besides that, I think I'm cool. I'm cool with anybody else winning the Super Bowl.
I know G12 doesn't want the Bills to win.
G12, he probably doesn't want the Bills.
Absolutely. Hey, man. Well, hey, that's it.
Whoa! Look at. I was surprised at first. I was surprised at first, but the Bills are in his division, so that makes sense. But you want Mahomes to get the 3-peat over Josh winning one? Like, I'm not a Bills fan, but like, you gotta feel bad for Josh. And like, how many times he's lost to Mahomes, and he's put up like 4 touchdown games, 5 touchdown games, having to do with Mahomes, and his defense always falls short. Like, yeah, Josh Allen deserves one. He does deserve one. He does his thing, man. He's a hell of a.
It'd be cool to see Lamar on the biggest stage. That'd be cool to see him in the Super Bowl. He definitely, him and Lamar, definitely 2 of the most exciting quarterbacks to watch, I would say. So.
And last thing before I end it off, Jay. On 10:14 p.m. PST 12/16/2024, the 49ers, regardless of what they'll do this offseason, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, doesn't matter. The 49ers, and I repeat, the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan as their head coach will not be winning a Super Bowl, and will not win a Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. That's all I have to say. Anything you want to say, Jay? And that's it. That's all I got to say for this one.
Hey, peace. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. And I guess enjoy some good football because the Niners season is over. See y'all soon. Peace.